So we're out at this absolutely gorgeous beach, and we have kind of the perfect conditions right now. Since it's early November, the sun stays really low in the sky, so we have a lot of long shadows. We only have about 4.5 hours of daylight left today, so I don't have to paint super fast, but I need to, if I want to get a few paintings in, I can't dilly-dally. It's so beautiful. It's just the perfect day. No wind, beautiful sun, warm sun, cool crisp air on my cheeks. So let's go find a spot to paint. Amazing. Currently I'm just wandering a little bit, scouting out different views, different little things I might paint. I basically want to paint everything though. And first I'll choose something kind of simple probably to warm up, maybe just a little pencil sketch even. Trips like this are really great for building my visual memory. So I take a lot of photos and videos. I always have those to look back on. I do a few sketches, but I really try to observe the color of the light changing, especially as it pours down into the valley, into the beach. It almost has like a golden hazy effect, and that changes all of the colors and all of the values. And that's the kind of thing that photos and videos don't really capture as much. So I also want to pay really close attention to how that light is going to shift over the next couple hours. First of all, I'd like to give a shout out to my partner Wolfie for filming a lot of what you see today in this video. He has been doing so amazing with learning the camera, learning different angles and composition and everything. And as a non-photographer, I know it can be tricky for him. And yeah, I just really appreciate his efforts, and I hope you guys do as well. If you want to help support my video but don't really know what to say, you could always just send some love his way. I'm sure he would really appreciate it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this sketch that I'm doing now. I'm using gouache. I'm using my dried gouache palette, which is set up in my Portable Painter Classic. It's basically my favorite way of using gouache outside now, especially now that we're entering, well, closer to winter. The humidity goes up, the temperatures drop, and paper just doesn't dry. So when I use watercolor outside, I am waiting way too long for my layers to dry. When I use gouache, it dries a little quicker, and I feel like I can get more layers in a shorter amount of time. It's just more enjoyable, basically. And I mean, y'all know I love gouache anyway, so. The gouache I'm using in this palette is mostly Shinhan Designer gouache. I recently did a swatching video about that, and I'm currently running some light fast tests about it, but I've been using their gouache for a long time now. It's extremely affordable here, and it's also the gouache that's going to be in my monthly gouache tutorial boxes, which, if you don't know what that is, I also have a video about it recently. I'll put a link in the description to that. And the pre-orders for those are open until November 15th. And I know some of you are probably sick of me talking about it, but it's how I support myself as a full-time artist. One of many ways, actually. So bear with me. And also, I'm just really excited about it because we're going to be like nerding out with gouache for a whole year. I wanted to talk a little bit about this painting and the strategy I have. You may have noticed when I first started painting, the first thing I did was capture the bright green highlights on the rocks, and that's mainly because the light changes so fast this time of year. I mean, it's always changing fast when you're painting outside, but November, December, January, like winter, we're getting into winter soon, it's really fast, and the sun sets really quick behind the hills, especially because there was a big hill behind us, so it was dropping really fast. If I didn't put those bright highlights in, I could have missed them completely. It's also kind of reminiscent of the way I work with watercolor, which is light to dark. You don't have to do that with gouache, but a lot of times when I'm out painting, I am doing two things. I am kind of approaching it like a watercolor mindset because that's just what I've always been used to outside. And I'm using as minimal water as possible. I'm trying to use as few layers as possible, and my watercolor approach is very much like that. I just want my paper to dry fast enough so I can keep layering or, do multiple sketches and move on. In this case, I was able to get most of the scene in pretty much one layer. I did add a couple small extra details on the rocks and in the foreground, but it was a quick one because it had to be. And the other thing I was doing was kind of taking color notes. I was working really quick, not super careful about my marks. I mean, I wanted it to look like the thing, but I was more focused on trying to capture the colors quickly before they change too much. Mostly in the shadowy areas of the cliff and the water, as well as the wet sand, because I want to do a bigger painting in a similar view but much wider and with a lot more wet sand showing, and this will really help when it comes time for that. I'll be able to combine these color notes that I made here with my photos and video references. I'm thinking of doing a Q&A video about painting with gouache outside, whether it's wet gouache or dry gouache. And actually, to be honest, the gouache I was using at this session was technically wet still. I hadn't let it completely dry in my palette. And for some reason, the Shinhan gouache takes a lot longer to dry in the palette, which is kind of nice because I've been able to use it pretty fresh for the last week and a half. Anyways, if you have any specific questions about the whole thing, process, materials, whatever, please ask in the comments and I'll compile those for a future video. I was caught off guard by how quickly the sun dipped behind the hill behind me, and before I knew it, most of the beach was in shadow. So I decided to move over towards where some of the waves were splashing on the rocks that were still illuminated. I thought it was interesting and a really good challenge to paint the darker rocks with bright water in front of it splashing around. More and more I find myself drawn to the juxtaposition of the soft, moving, energetic water next to the solid rock formations, something that won't move, at least not anytime soon. And one of the really fun aspects of this is using unique brush strokes for each different type of thing. So maybe my water is a little bit softer, a little bit more blendy. I mean, I do create a lot of dry brush textures on it, but then in the rocks, I use a lot of harder lines and a lot of layered dry brush textures. Something I'm trying to work out, I guess, is how do I draw focus to one specific area, because my tendency is to sort of over render all of the rocks that are in focus. I'm not really sure how to explain that, but it's something I'm playing with, something I'm working on, and I'll probably be spending a lot of time by the waves this winter. Luckily, they don't need leaves or moss or tree or anything growing on them to be interesting. They're always interesting to me. So even in the heart of winter, when the forests are more barren, I can always find something really interesting by the coast. Okay, well, the last rays of light are coming over the hill, just touching the peaks over here. I took a ton of reference photos and videos that I'll paint from at home. This was so beautiful, and it was perfect just to rekindle that spark, that inspiration that I needed to paint the sea. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, for being here, for supporting me. I look forward to seeing you all soon for some more painting. Take care, everyone.